So Jesper, I wanted to chime in on all the new things that are happening today, agentic AI. We talked about super users, the new threats that are coming in. I just wanted to get your view on, well, security operation centers that we have today and that we had yesterday. Do you think that these are future-proof with everything that is coming ahead? Or do you see some changes there as well?
I definitely see changes coming for a lot of organizations. I would say today we have a lot of conversations. You know, when we talk to our customers as well as when we talk to partners, it's a lot of SOC transformation conversation going on. And for me personally, that's a necessity for a lot of organizations. They have to transform the way of working. I mean, the old ways of working, and I know this painfully myself from my past career as well, where I had a SOC placed in a different country than where I was positioned. That in itself was a bit of a challenge, but also with the technology we were using at the time, it was the traditional, you know, there was an EDR solution and the network and firewall team had a firewall, and you know it was different. You had the server and application team that was running, you know, the whole environment for Office applications and all of that. So it was a lot of different stakeholders when something happened, and that we realized from a security operations perspective, we needed to change a lot. Similar to what Palo Alto Networks, when they coined the term XDR, it was because we knew that, you know, the endpoint is not enough in its own. We need data from more sources as well. We need to pull in everything we can from all of these angles.
XDR, like an extended detection and response, right?
Exactly, extended detection and response. So instead of just endpoint, we start reaching into, you know, what are some of the telemetry that are coming from the network environment, you know, not just the host environment the agent was installed on, but around the endpoint as well. And I think one thing is having the right technology in place, but transformation is something, and we've talked about that earlier as well, right? It's not always easy. I mean, changing the ways that you've been operating for maybe a decade, maybe 2 decades, changing all of your processes, the most modern security operations center today have almost like a service catalog of services they offer to the business. But what do you think on the topic of going from, you know, the old ways of working where we had set elements of technology, we tied that in and we started building our processes on it. But we're pulling the security operations teams out from the shadow now, aren't we? They're offering services to the organizations, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a number of elements in that SOC transformation that you highlighted. There's the people element. The SOC is increasingly seen as a essential element in protecting and safeguarding the enterprise, and no longer as a bunch of technical people in a dark room looking at screens. You know, so
all the ones in hoodies.
Yeah, exactly. So what you need is AI and specifically neural networks helping you to find those needles, right? So that's where AI comes to the rescue. You know, in the first phase, what we're also seeing. You know, from a technology perspective, there's 3 layers, right? There's the what we call the SIEM platform in the middle, which does all the correlation of the events, and it's like a sandwich, right? On top you have the workbench, the analyst workbench, which does security automation and remediation. So the whole workflow that is now starting to get automated through agentic AI as well. And at the bottom you have the data ingestion, because you're pulling in these billions of logs. And you have to optimize that ingestion, you know, and squeeze it and model it and compress it and do all kinds of magic before you put it into the, you know, the middle of the sandwich, which is the next gen SIEM technology, as we call it. So long story short, if you combine, you know, what we think is best of breed technology from Palo Alto Networks with best of breed people, skills, expertise, policies, procedures, orange books, etc. Everything you want in a modern SOC, and combine AI there, not from a marketing perspective, but from an efficiency and effectiveness perspective. How do I insert agentic AI in my orchestration layers? How do I leverage the 2,000 plus neural networks that you have built at Palo Alto Networks and as part of a very powerful machine to find those needles in the haystack. All of that combined gives a phenomenal value proposition, and that's what our clients are appreciating, that we are combining best of breed expertise with best of breed technology
Yeah.
in that triangle, where we work with the client and our partner to build a world-class solution that will help them to stay safe in the next decade, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also, when we talk about, having, and I get that question a lot actually, having, if you do localize your security operations, so you run it yourself in the business, or you globalize and you use a partner that actually have global knowledge and global insights at the fingertips and ready to also scale when it's needed, I think that's probably where a lot of organizations are struggling, right? Because if you sit with your local SOC and you do not have a partner that can help you when it gets really, really bad, because it does for some, right? And then when you realize it in the moment, it's too late, typically, right? Something has already gone down, and your business is going to be severely impacted, both financially, reputation-wise, maybe even, complete disruption of services, all of that. And you want to have something ready before that. So that's probably where you need to think in your own SOC transformation thoughts. Where are you at this stage? Can you do enough locally, or do you need to globalize your security operations capabilities? And I think exactly to that point, in having the right architectural setup of the technologies, along with the skills that can operate and continue to I was about to say renovate, but it's a mix between renovate and innovate together with the technologies, so continue to adapt and adjust to however the future will look like. So you don't have to take on that. Let's be honest, it's a bit of a punishment for yourself, right? You don't have to manage that part. Someone else is doing it. For me, that sounds appealing.
Yeah, and there's something I call the wildebeest effect, right? So in the savannah, if you have one wildebeest running around and there's 5 lionesses, chances are the wildebeest will not have a good day, right?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't see the lionesses coming because he's only got 2 eyes.
Yeah.
When you're 1,000 wildebeest, you've got 2,000 eyes. You see the same 5 lionesses, the threats, but you're a team of 1,000 wildebeest, right?
Yeah.
And the same goes for a managed security service provider. We have thousands of clients, so we see all these threats developing in all these verticals. The latest OT security threat that is specifically written to attack oil rigs, something very familiar to you.
Yes.
Yeah. So we will capture that early, and we can share that with all the other oil rig people, all the other clients, right? So all the other wildebeests, and say, there's a new lioness there, watch out, right? So that by itself, irrespective of the technology that we're using, which of course is best of breed and top notch, is already a huge advantage versus, the lonely GNU wildebeest trying to solve all of this himself in the lonely SOC.
Yeah.
That's something to think about, right?
Yeah.
And I'm using that analogy with CISOs who in the past, typically said, but I don't think you will ever be as good as my often banking team. It's typically in finance that I'm seeing this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you'll do a better job than we are doing in our own SOC. Well, you might have the best people. You're still one wildebeest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we do see a lot more than you will ever see in your bank, irrespective of the size. And that's something hard to argue against. So there is a benefit of being part of a bigger community and working together. There's also threat intel sharing, etc. So we could talk hours about this, but it's not good to be lonely in cyber. If you're lonely, you have a higher probability of getting attacked first, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So when we talk about these agents, we all give them a profile, access to data. You mentioned identity. Do you think that from a cybersecurity perspective, you need to treat agents with that identity different than humans? Or do we all put them in a zero trust frame and trust no one?
So I like that approach, right? Thinking about identities with a zero trust mindset is actually really sound advice for a lot of organizations, right? I mean, assume breach used to be a concept that we talked about for networks, more or less, right? We started out with networks, and then we started talking a bit about it for applications, and then some organization that was very mature talks about it for their cloud environments and cloud-based environments.
Because you would expect mutual authentication happening between your agent and the third-party agent in that supply chain example that we talked about in previous episodes, right? So if you evolve from a traditional supply chain to a supply chain that is run by agentic AI, which is what a lot of people are seriously considering now.
Yes.
Because agentic AI's primary use case in what I've seen so far, and it's been out for like 2-3 years, is optimizing back office. That's where it shines. Replacing humans by machines so that the humans can do more interesting stuff. It's not a job killer per se. It's actually giving people more interesting tasks to do than, for example, comparing invoices or doing due diligence on accounts and all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot that agents can actually do a lot better. But of course, when you give them, I sound like a broken record, but if you give those agents superpowers, they become super dangerous as well. So you have to be very careful in doing that.
Yeah, I agree. And the privileges to do changes, right? That's going to be one of the cornerstones in the future as well. Is it going to be allowed to create an identity more, like duplicating itself, or even if it doesn't duplicate itself? Is it going to be the ones that create identities for others upon request? I mean, putting agentic AI into a help desk is something a lot of organizations are looking into. Instead of the chatbot, they want to have agentics and agents in there. And I think that's a great idea. But give an agent the opportunity to create identities across your digital environment, and then it goes rogue and it has the privilege to create other privileges.
Yes.
Isn't that? Let's not go down that route, but there's a world of opportunities for us as security professionals and advisors to help organizations move into that part where, one, you get the visibility to actually look at what's going on. Two, you get the actionability on top. And through the partnership and the advisory, that you can actually get a roadmap towards being ready and having a strong foundation for all of those types of identities, what's already there and what's coming, right? I mean, we've sort of walked around it a bit, but I always call that triad of success, where you have, an organization that needs something, doesn't necessarily have the skills and the people to reach that point. They reach out to an advisor. That advisor will provide them the guidance to make the right technology choices and find the right supplier.
Absolutely, and that's where we like to play our role, of course, in partnership with Palo Alto Networks and our clients. That triangle that you talked about, which I think is increasingly becoming important. I mean, if you look at the evolution that cybersecurity has taken in the last 25 years, and yes, I've been that long in the industry, unfortunately or fortunately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I was just thinking about when you said back to that whole, maximizing your investment, right? One of the things that I've seen in the past as well is, if you don't know how well you utilize the technology and the products you have in, that's another reason for why you want to bring in a partner who can help you with, well, is it configured correctly is obviously a very, very big thing. But also looking at, are you leveraging this to the point where you actually could? Are you using the functionality that is offered? That utilization is at the end of the day what actually gives you value for money. Right?
So yes, when you talked about the SOC and the next gen SIEM coming into this, and CISOs need to be actually looking into the next gen SIEM, do you see an added benefit when we talk about total cost of ownership that they really need to be able to look into if they haven't done so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question, because I think a lot of CISOs, I mean, when we look at SOC transformation, and why it's different from the past, where you bought a product as part of a larger IT project or something, and you say, I need security around this, and I don't have these capabilities today, so I'll stuff these capabilities in there, and it becomes very, the budget becomes structured by project by project by project, which is, in my opinion, not the right way to go about it. I would take what I call, I'll jump in the enterprise helicopter and I lift myself up and I look at it from the full organization perspective. If I can bring in the best of breed in terms of technology, if I can bring in the best partner, and we can start building a journey together, I might be able to pivot from a security maturity standpoint of where I am to maybe 1 or 2, maybe even 3 levels above. And that in turn can reduce the cost that I use on something called insurance, for instance. It could give me a competitive edge in the industry that I'm in. It might even be able to accelerate the strategic ambitions and initiatives we have in the business, which means reduce time to market for something. So if I look at that level of view, and I would advise all CISOs to start getting a grasp on what that would actually mean for your business. If you start budgeting together with the business initiatives and figuring out how we can reduce cost for the entirety of the organization. I think that would be super beneficial. And again, like I've said in the past, transformation are not easy. This is, again, a very good point to pull in a partner like Entity Data and start having the conversation around what could this potentially mean for us? What kind of opportunities are currently hidden for me because I've always had my security lens on? I didn't necessarily look at it business economy wise.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And we mentioned in previous episodes that CISOs are increasingly becoming business outcome centric. They're no longer the technical people who say nay in the cave, right? I mean, they are part of the business conversation. The board also now adheres much more importance to compliance, to governance. If you look at the impact of NIS2, for example, in Europe, or DORA in the financial industry, I mean, it's significant, and the board wants to understand, where are we, Mr. or Mrs. CISO? You know, what's the plan, right? Yeah. And then if you, linking back to what you said about total cost of ownership, about things like return on security investment, one of the things that we help our clients with is the investment decision. So it's pretty complicated, because if you say, okay, well, our ambition is to get our maturity level for perimeter security from a 3 to a 4, right, on a scale of 5, for example. Our security level for identity security from maturity level, from a 2 to a 4. You only have so much dollars or euros, available to actually do this, right? So how do you make that decision? And that is not straightforward. So what we're trying to do with our clients is actually calculate the ROSI, the return on security investment, for each of those different investment options, and come up with strong advice, like, we would first look at identity, and then at perimeter security, and then maybe at crypto, right? So that's something where we help our clients with. And the new CISO, should be we think much more aware of the overall business, get in the enterprise helicopter, like you say, and get that more holistic view of, what's the company strategy? How can I help in, turning cybersecurity and my department into a business enabler rather than a business inhibition department, right? Which we probably were 10, 15 years ago. Like, no, you can't do that. So I think there's a change in mentality, and that will also be positive for our CISO friends, right? Because when you have a direct interface with the board and you talk about things like ROSI in a language that they understand, because most of them are very very well trained in finance matters, and of course less in technology and compliance matters, by definition. But they understand the language of ROSI, right? If you explain it, and if you turn security from a problem into an opportunity, into a business enabler, you have a much more positive discussion, which in turn will give you hopefully bigger budgets and more opportunities to actually make the enterprise, and by extension the world, a safer place.
Yeah, and especially that about, being in front of the board of directors and talking about the economy of the decisions that, as security leaders, you're taking hard decisions a lot of the time, right? Making that or translating that into an economy impact for them really matters. I mean, the same way we report our metrics, right? We haven't talked much about, how we report from the Security Operations Center towards the rest of the business, because traditionally that's been, we've had this amount of phishing emails, we've had, this amount of malware incidents.
IP addresses.
Exactly. Something that everybody sort of now at least has a bit of an idea of what is, but the numbers is not relevant for anyone, right? Because it doesn't really matter how much you get of it. It's the one that takes you down that's really important, right? So maybe it's time to look at that whole, while you have the conversation with your partner, and you start talking about that ROSI, return on security investment, you start tying into, if we do changes, this is the approximate cost it will have for the business, but this is the approximate benefit that we get from making this change. So we might replace one piece of technology here, or we might do these 3 processes different. And that actually allows us to change where we spend our money into something better, right?
And the other thing we can bring into that discussion is, how are my peers in my vertical, what are they doing? Right? Because the thing about entity data is that we do this for hundreds of clients, right? So
Yes.
we have this very rich database. If you take, for example, manufacturing, well, we can tell you that that kind of security control is deployed with X% of the manufacturing vertical clients
Yeah.
and has had this kind of impact on the maturity score, right? So you can actually judge the investment decision not just on the rosy of the control itself, but also on what are my peers doing, right? Because in for a bank, for example, putting in all the measures to get closer to DORA compliance would be far more highly weighted than the same measures for an oil rig company, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
so the vertical element also comes to play, and that's why I'm saying that the modern CISO, has to be more and more a business person than a technology person, and we're seeing that with the younger CISOs typically have a business background as well, more than a technical background, which was unthinkable 15 years ago. You had to know your firewalls, because that was what security was about, firewalls, right? I mean, face it.
Yeah.
Whereas now it is so complex, and it has its tentacles into all these business discussions that you get more, I would say people with a business or an economic background in our
I agree. Yeah.
Gentlemen, I really want to thank you for your time today. Stefan Hendricks, Entity Data, Jesper Olsson, Palo Alto Networks. I would love to see you guys again soon. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.